All righty. Welcome everybody to the show. I'm your host, John Crook. Thank you for tuning in to our we're kind of really kicking things up here. We just had our intro video. So if you're in the comments, let me know if you liked it or not. Alrighty. We just did it. If you are tuning in late, catch it up on the replay there. So thanks for tuning in this evening. I'm your host, John Crook. And thanks for like I said, tuning in. I got an interesting show here tonight. I'm actually kind of excited because what you can actually see here is I actually have a special guest. And this is the guest here, so I don't know which way it might be on your screen. So this guy here, but we'll get to that in 1 second. But first of all, thank you for tuning in. Tonight's episode is entitled "The ICS-205, Not Just for EmComm Usage." So 205s are kind of an important thing, especially if you are involved in EmComm, but they can actually be used in more so of a daily kind of basis on there. And tying into last week's episode, which dealt with outdoor communications or coming up with like an outdoor communications plan, I figured what better way to discuss this and go over this than to bring in a special guest. So without further ado, welcome to my guest. His name is Wally. His call is N9VAO.
Hi, John. Hey, thanks for having me back again. I really enjoy your program, by the way. Thanks for having me back.
Thank you very much. And for those of you that are not aware, Wally, of course, is my dad. He lives up in northern Wisconsin. Okay, so you got to tell people who might not be in the Midwest, um, why are you the color you are tonight?
Well, right now in Wisconsin, John, we're in the middle of our gun deer season up here. It started on Saturday, it goes all the way till this coming Sunday. And why I'm wearing the blaze orange is because I want to point out something about outdoor communications and how vitally important it is, especially if you're hunting with other people. They're not usually within eyesight of yours. Up here in northern Wisconsin, as you well know, as well as I, being a former EMT and you being a current person involved with medical services, we always hear about hunters getting lost. And if you have a good handheld radio with you, you'll never get lost from the rest of your group. So that's why outdoor communications is vitally important, especially if you're out there hunting, not just if you get lost. I've heard of hunters being having to be found by the sheriff's department and rescue services because they fell down, they hurt their leg, they didn't return to the hunting camp. The other hunters wanted to know, well, where is he? Where is she? Whatever. Communications is vitally important, especially when you're outdoors with other people.
And that is a good part, or a point and part of the overall aspect of that outdoor communications program and outdoor communications
Mm-hmm.
plan. And then
Yep.
that's why when we did the episode last week, we had a lot of people that watched it. There were a few people that left some comments, emailed me directly and stuff. And that's kind of where I came up with tonight's idea for a show, which was, hey, the plan was great. We talked about like, hey, if you're lost, let the person know that you're going to be, either every eight, on the hour, however you're going to do it, however you need to do that. But with that, the thing was, well, how do I lay out my plans? How do I know? Do I just scribble it on a piece of paper? Do I write it on a napkin? What do I exactly do? And I said, you know what? This is a great thing to talk about the ICS 205. Now, of course, I'm a little EM nerd. That's what my training is in, and what have you, and the degree and all that stuff. But I have found, especially from the EmComm usage, it's a great tool because what you're doing with the 205 is you're basically putting it on paper and you're handing the paper off, right? To people you don't know in most cases. So what better way to be able to hand off your information to someone that you may don't know or they may not know than using a 205?
Yeah, the form ICS form 205 is basically it is your plan of communications. In other words, assigning people to certain frequencies, to certain jobs. You have it all written on paper. Anybody else in the communications area with you by your radios and that stuff will also see, well, who's on what frequency, who's doing what, where they're at.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of what tonight is going to be all about, and we're going to talk about it. But we're gonna not only are we just going to talk about it, I'm going to show you how to fill it out, kind of give a little back information on there. But then also too is we both kind of actually have a little bit of a story to talk about and how in the past few years, when there's been snow and there has been a pandemic, we've partaken in a few events that have actually required the usage of a 205, and more so how the 205 actually helped out with some confusion in communications. Right up at the top there, though, if you kind of getting the screen there, right above at the top banner, though, if you do have questions, comments, you want to give an idea or suggestion for a show, I actually have some that are coming up thanks to some suggestions that are coming in here. Don't be afraid to email me. It's communications-cigars at jjkcom.com. That's correct. Communications-cigars at jjkcom.com. JJK Communications is a sponsor of the show to help us with this equipment, to help us with some of these things on there. So let's talk about what the 205 is used for. We kind of scratched on the purpose, but let's jump into some of the stories. So I think you have the best probably story of it
Yep.
in a real life situation where I feel I have a good story on it dealing with the day-to-day things.
Yeah. Well, as you know, John, I'm heavily involved with organizing the amateur radio communications for the American Birkebeiner ski race up here in Wisconsin. And for those of you that are not familiar with it, it's a very big ski race. Most of the time, almost every year, we have as many as 10,000 skiers, not just from local or United States. We have skiers coming to this from Europe, Japan, all different countries. Setting up the communications plan, the 205 form is something that I can fill out. I give it to every one of the people that are in the communication system with me so that no matter where they are at along the 26-mile ski route, they can see who is where, what frequency they may be on, what their job is. And they know that I, along with another person at the incident command center at the radio system, they know how to contact me, and I can look at that 205 form and exactly see if somebody calls in, I know where they're at instantly, I know what their job is, and all I have to do is listen to what they have to say. If it needs to get passed along to another person, I could tell them, well, contact so and so farther down the route and tell them what they need to know. So the 205 form is basically the plan laid out for your communications, and everybody should know who is what and what frequencies they're using.
Exactly. Now, with that, let's put it into context of it. So, what is the maximum amount of skiers that the Birkebeiner ski race, so the American Birkebeiner ski race, country ski race, has stated? What is the maximum amount of skier registrations that they will take?
Well, for the Berkey race itself, the full race going all the way from the Mount Telemark area up in Cable to the finish line in Hayward, that's a 26-mile course, and they limit that to usually a maximum of 8,000 skiers in that event. The other 2,000 skiers are in maybe the what's known as the Quarter Lopet, the half race, or other races that are earlier in the week, like the Prince Hakonnen race,
Hmm.
which is only a 5K race, and so on like that. But when you add all those skiers together, it usually runs around 10,000 people partaking in all those ski races.
Right. So now let's talk about the course because that really puts a play into it. So obviously the ski race is done by kilometers,
Hmm.
and it's through the woods because it mimics the Vikings doing the cross country ski to
Right.
protect the prince and everything. But realistically, how many miles in terms is it?
It's a 26-mile course winding through the woods all the way, like I said, from Cable, Wisconsin down to Hayward here. It's 26 miles, or if you want to, 52 kilometers is what it is. So the start to the finish is that 52-kilometer race. They have food stations and emergency stations all along that route, and that's where I situate or put my communications people at each one of those stations. Our job with amateur radio is number one If they call in to me, I have to report to the headquarters if anybody drops out of the race. There's also been times too where, and I don't mean this in a mean way, but the actual emergency communications by the sheriff's department, ambulance service, so on, has failed. They've turned to us amateurs to relay messages to an ambulance because somebody was hurt along the ski race, or uh, a food station maybe ran out of food for the skiers. So we are the backup communications. They know over the years now how valuable amateur radio communications is, especially when the main communication system falls apart, and it has.
Well, to put it into perspective, and I guess this will be another episode there. No communications system is 100%. I don't care what
Correct.
anybody says, it never is 100%.
Correct.
But if you take a look at the topographical terrain map and everything like that,
Oh, yeah.
actually where you're starting from, in well, it starts in, yeah, because now it starts in Cable and ends in Hayward. It used to be starts in Hayward, Wisconsin, and ends in Cable, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
But where your terrain, there's actually a spot there more towards the first or the halfway almost to the north side of the course, the
Yeah.
halfway, so like a quarter, let's call it. But that terrain peak is actually taller than the terrain of the start and the
Yes.
finish. So
Yes.
so you're trying to literally tuck up a hill.
Yes. You know, before I knew anything about the Berkey ski race, and I had people talking to me about it before I was involved in the communications of it, my first thing out of my mouth was, how can you ski uphill? Well, that's what you do. Of course, you know, with cross country skiing, you're going uphill and downhill. And there is that high point just a little bit to the north of the halfway mark. It's called Sealy Fire Tower area, is what it is. It used to be an old fire tower there from the DNR. That's the highest point in the course. And that is approximately, I believe, around 700 feet taller or higher than the finish line, and about 600 feet higher than the start line.
Yeah,
But
and
as you get to that point, you're going up and down hills, and then of course you get to that Sealy Fire Tower, the high point, and we used to joke with the skiers, "Oh, it's easy now; it's all
well,
downhill
downhill
from
there.
here." Yeah.
But now, so with that, so that many miles, yeah,
Mm.
and like I said, I've worked it myself, and it's just hard to put it into your mind that that is that many miles of people literally skiing up hills and then down hills, and everything.
Mhm.
But how many food stations or medical stations do you provide communications for?
There are 8 of them along the course. And the medical stations are located right by the food stations. There's 8 of them along the course. And we have an amateur radio operator in some places that are really busy, like the halfway point. We have 2 amateur radio operators because we need to keep record of who dropped out of the race, or if they call in to the headquarters to me, hey, we need more of this at this food station, or the people can't get through on their system, get a hold of headquarters and tell them we need an ambulance here because a skier went down and injured his leg.
And of course it's a supplemental communications. I
Yes.
know there's some people I think even in the room here. I think I saw a couple of IDs pop up, or names I should say, that I think they've probably helped out with. I know the big Chicago Marathon takes place, a couple different
Hmm.
bike races and stuff on there. But that brings up a good point, because how many different people are you having come work this event? So you have 8 stations.
8
Really?
stations. Yeah. Well, actually, usually we have some, the amateur operators will bring their wife to help them with paperwork, even though she is not an amateur operator. She's with her husband there, though, helping him keep track of bib numbers of the skiers and so on, like that. The actual amateur radio operators, there are 2 of us and the net control station, myself and another amateur operator there, because while he's talking to our people along the route, I'm on the computer entering information for the main Berkey office to see. Well, this person dropped out, this bib number dropped out because of an injury or fatigue or an equipment problem. So I have at least one amateur operator at each station, so that's 8 right there. Except the halfway point, I have 2 amateurs. So we got 9 out in the field, and myself and another one at the net control station. So you're looking at around, well, there's been years where I've had as many as 12, and usually it'll run around 11 of us.
Okay. And they're not from the area. They're
No.
far. Some come far away, like hundreds of miles.
Oh, yes. I put out the call for volunteers to come up here and help with this. They love doing it. We meet very early in the morning at a restaurant for breakfast. They receive their assignments then, and then they go out to their location. I've had people here, amateur operators here from uh, the Eau Claire area, Hudson area, Black River Falls, all over, all over. Even some come out of Minnesota and have helped.
And what's the unique thing about your information packets? What's in that information packet you hand out in the morning?
Well, what I do is that I know that people coming to the area do not exactly know where everything is at. So in that packet, there are maps and marked locations as to where they have to go for their station. There's instructions as to what to do when they get to that location. I give them extra paper, pencils, and pens. Also, there is a breakdown of what times. Now, again, these 8,000 skiers just all of a sudden the gun go off and all 8,000 take off at once. They have what they call starting grids, which is usually around, as many as 500. So they have a list on there telling them, well, the first skiers will leave at 8 o'clock. Then the next group leaves at 8:10. Then at 8:20, 8:30, so on like that. They have all the information they need in that packet because I know when you're coming from far away to a strange location, you need to know as much as you can about the area and about the area that you're going to be working in.
And of course, part of that communications or part of that packet is also the communications packet, which is the ICS
Yes.
205.
Yes.
Now,
And then, yeah.
I was going to say now before some people, because I know some people would say that are involved in EM and stuff like that on there, they're going to go and they're going to say, John, there's two ICS 205s. So just a point of clarification, there is the ICS 205, which we're going to talk about, which is frequency based down, but then there is also an ICS 205A. And that gives the names and then like the ways to communicate. So like cell phone or ways to communicate them. We're going to be talking about
Correct.
strictly frequencies tonight.
Correct. Yeah, that's another thing. I'm glad you mentioned it too, because I also have my cell phone number in that packet too, just in case they have a problem with their communications. They can at least call me at Net Control on the cell phone.
Okay. Now, Brian, AD8GI, he turns in every week here. He asks a question for you, real quick. Are you tracking people in APRS as well?
Excuse me. Well, we tried that, but because of the areas down in the valleys and some of these areas along the ski course, some of the heavily wooded areas, the APRS signal was not able to get out good. And as you know, we have tried that. We have experimented with it. Basically, no, because I know my people are assigned to a certain spot and they're not going to be moving along the course. They're going to stay at that one spot. So I know where they're at.
Yep.
Now, we had brought up to the Berkey Foundation, the American Birkebeiner Foundation, about APRS on maybe the lead skier. But then again, too, experimenting with that, we found out that it didn't even work for 50% of the course because of the up and down the hills and in the heavily wooded areas these courses go through.
Yep, and that's the problem is because
Yeah,
as much as we'd like to have it, just sometimes the infrastructure
correct.
is not there. So let me do
Yeah.
this. Let's dive into the ICS 205 form. So if people are there, they're not really 100% sure on if it's what exactly it is. So I'm gonna pull it up on my screen here,
Okay.
and I believe. Let me see here. I think people should be able to see it here. Let me pull. Sometimes you know how technology goes, right?
Yeah.
Let me do this here real quick. Pull that up, and then let me go to my other screen here. I'm going to share my screen here. We're going to do a window real quick, and then voila, there we are. Alrighty. So, we as this pops up here right now, we're going to go and take a look at it, and this is the actual one from FEMA. So for people who might be saying, hey, exactly which, hey, I've seen different ones out there. Let me go ahead and actually make it a full scale there so we could see better. And I'm going to zoom in too a little bit. So this is the ICS-205 form. So the ICS-205 form is an actual FEMA form. So if you had the chance to take the acronym classes, as I joke around ICS, NIMS 700, NIMS 800, ICS 100, ICS 200, 300, that kind of thing like that. These are the forms that are available for you on there. As you see, it's a pretty easy, simple layout. This is just a single form. You can have multiple forms if you have a multiple incident on there. And starting off right at the top, we always want to put the incident name. So if we were doing it, so we'd say, let's do Berkey 2022 as argument's sake there. So if we were going to start out this form, we want to name the incident, and we want to make sure that it's clear the incident's name on there, because you can actually have ICS 205 forms within many incidences within a large scale incident. So case in point, some of the examples that I've seen, I was working for the Washington County Sheriff's Department as a dispatcher. We had a Memorial Day, 2000 something, 2006, 7, whenever it was. But a horrible tornado came through that weekend in our county. And what happened was that we had a 205 form that we drafted in dispatch for the general communications responding to the incident, for basically like staging and for people coming in. But then we had a 205 form specifically for rescue operations, recovery operations, civilian team operations. So once again, you can have multiple ICSs forms in here. Don't be afraid to name it however you need to. The second box here, pretty easy, date and time. And this is when we're preparing it. So if we were to prepare it for today, what's today? Today's the 22nd. So we'd put November 22nd, 2021. And then the time, we'll just put military time. We'll do 2000 hours for argument's sake. Whoop. Let me go down to the next line there. Enter. There we go. So 2000 hours. Whoop, I can't even type tonight. 2000 hours. Now, the operational period, this is pretty important on the ICS 205 form. And the reason it's due to the fact that you may have certain teams that are going to come in that have specialized communication equipment, or there may be a certain group that's going to come in, which might be on a different band, which might be using a different set of frequencies, whatever the case may be. And if you think about this, like, let's say we're talking about a rescue period of an operation. So now let's talk about the Berkey here, but a rescue period of an operation. You may have local responders, local agencies and stuff coming in that they may be able to be in, let's say, their own county or their own municipality area. They may have all common shared channels. So they may have the dispatch channel, they may have a couple tactical channels, whatever the case may be. But now as the event unfolds or it goes longer and longer, maybe you might have civilian teams. Well, civilian teams might come in and they may need different radios, but by the time civilian teams are coming in, guess what? That rescue recovery might be done. So that's where you would go ahead and put the operational period on there. So I'm just going to say February 2022 because I don't know when it is, to February 2022, but you would put the date on there and then you'd put the time. So it usually starts about 6 a.m. and then what the time runs to about 5 p.m.
Yeah, pretty much about that. Yeah.
Argument's sake, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, this zone and group channel numbers here, this is where a lot of people tend to get a little confused and upset with an ICS 205 form, because there's always a question is, do I put the zone and group channel for your radio? Do I put the zone and group channel for my radio? How do we do this? Now, you got to look as when you're making this 205 form, it may be, as here, we're doing November for the mythical February of 2022 event. You may need to, or it may be far enough in advance, let's say, that if this is done and drafted, you can actually send it out, and then people may be able to program their radios to a zone or a bank, however you call it, depending on radios. In addition, some users might be able to do what they call, I know, like on Yaesu radios, it's PMG, that they could put it into a bank on there. Some people call it tactical bank on some business and LMR type radios on there. So basically, you start out easy. So we're going to call it Zone 1, and we're going to call Channel 1. Now, the function is really going to be named as to what is the purpose of the channel. So in other words, if this is going to be communicating with IC, you may put IC comms. If it's going to be used by a strike force, let's say they have a rescue squad that's going to be taking care of the North District of this event, you may say rescue squad or rescue squad, okay, or rescue ops as a general kind of term on there. So in this case, we're doing it for the Berkey, let's say ICS-205. So what that means is that they would go ahead and be able to talk to the incident commander, the operations division on there. So the channel are trunked radio system names. So the channel name would be as if you have a common name for it, or if it's maybe a known repeater. So in this case, let's say it's going to be used in my repeater. So you could put N9UPC VHF repeater. Okay, and you're not putting the frequency here. That's just the important part. You're not putting the frequency in here. You're putting the frequency name or the channel name in there. That's going to be the common nomenclature for the event. So in this case, the assignment would be amateur radio operators, or you could say all, or it depends on who's going to be using this channel. Now, mind you, this is the FEMA form that I downloaded. They do have, and the reason it says receive frequency N or W, the N or W means narrow or wide band. So depending on your incident, you may have wide band channels, you may have narrow band channels. If you're doing public safety channels, pretty much everything's narrow band. If it's digital, it's going to be considered technically narrow band. If it's like FRS, or well, not FRS, GMRS would be a better one, maybe some marine channels, maybe certain other channels on there, they might be wide band, that's where we would do it. So in this case, the receive frequency is now going to be how your radio receives it. So for us up there, it's 147.255.0, right? Or 255, we could put it there. But now in this case, I want to program it and put a W on there so they know that it is a wide band frequency. Because if you program it narrow band, and we've had people that have done that, they've come up there, for some reason, they have a public safety radio, put it in there, and it's narrow band, so it's, kind of a little more muffled, but, whatever. But that is why you'd want to put a W there. The receive tone or NAC. So the receive tone is going to be your CTCSS or your DCS, also known as PL or DPL, and the NAC would be if it's digital. So in this case, it's an analog, so it's going to be a PL tone of 110.9. We are 600 kilohertz up, so we do 147.855 for the transmit. And once again, don't forget, we got to put the W for wideband. Tone is going to be the same, 110.9. And now here, this A, D, and M under mode. So A means analog, D means digital, and in this case, in this form, it would be P25, or M means mix mode. So in this case, it's an FM only channel. We're going to put A, and then we're going to put amateur usage only. Now, the reason I put that in the remarks there is because sometimes people may not be aware. So you may have a public safety radio that someone is going to program up with the amateur frequencies on there. And in that case, and in that situation, they may say, oh, wait, N9UPC VHF repeater. Well, I could talk on that. Nope, this is amateur usage only. Now, flip side of the coin, there are sometimes some situations where you may have public safety frequencies being able to be used by amateurs. So we'll get to that in just one moment here. Now, we're still in zone 1. We're going to do channel 2. And you always had a simplex, correct? You always had a simplex for that on there. So how did you call it? Well, you just called it backup channel, correct?
It was just a backup. If one certain section of the course, they were having poor communication problems, they would switch to simplex then and talk to the next station down the line with simplex, who could then talk to me through the repeater system.
Now, what was that simplex that you used?
We used 14658.
Okay, so in this case, I'm going to jump right to the frequency. I'm going to go 146.580, and you did not use a tone, correct? Or you're correct.
You're correct. It was wideband, and there was no tone used.
Okay, so the reason I skipped to the frequency, I'll show you in a minute here. So 146.58, public safety. And then that channel on there, I believe that was just called County TAC, if I remember correctly.
I believe so, yes.
And then in this case, now the assignment was all users because amateurs could talk on it because they were authorized by the public safety people to do it, and you had a radio capable of doing it. You didn't go modifying radios. You had a public safety radio that you could talk on there. And even though it's not in the same radio, you still need to list all of the frequencies used. So in this case, you could put all on there. And then I think it was like a 151280 or 153 something. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'd
On
have to
there.
look in my records too. I don't remember.
Yeah. But in this case, it's a public safety frequency. So now what you're going to do is this time you're going to do N because it's narrowband. Don't forget that.
Yep.
And I think the tone was like 88.5 or something. We're just filling to fill here. No big deal. We were not using frequencies illegal in case anybody says anything. Okay, 88.5 for argument's sake. Now in this case it was analog and then all comms. All comms between IC. And as a matter of fact, up here I should have put IC amateur comms. And you want to make sure you get very specific on there. I apologize for that. I should have put public safety IC comms. So in this case, the channel they called it was Law 1. Okay. And then the assignment was law enforcement only. And then their frequency was, let's say, 1450000. Of course, once again, that's going to be narrowband. But they were digital. So in this case, the digital, you want to put the NAC code that they were using. So they were using an open NAC code for receive, so they did what they call a NAC code of F7E. That's a P25 thing. We may cover that a little bit later on. And then we're going to go and cover the input once again. And then now they had a transmit NAC code in there. And then that one, I think, was 100, okay, for a NAC code. And in this case, it's not a bad idea to type in NAC. So like F7E, okay, that's a P25 NAC if you are not aware. But this may look like 100 hertz. So in this case, put 100 NAC. Now in this case, it's digital only. So we're going to put a D. And then if you want to add remarks, you can add remarks on there. So it really, it's kind of simple and easy to use in that case. But I'm going to close this. And reason I'm going to go ahead and close it is because I want to talk about a little bit of a difference. I'm going to stop presenting there. I want to talk about a little bit of a difference that actually occurs when you're trying to do this information. And what I mean by that is that I looked at the ICS-205 and I said I didn't like it. And the reason I didn't like it is because not the function, not the purpose, not the aspects of it, but that it only covered P25. How many people are doing fusion? How many people are doing D-Star? How many people are doing DMR, P25, NextEnd, all this kind of thing like that on there, which makes it so difficult because if you want to use this as a tool on day-to-day and how I use it in our Aries Races group, it's difficult. So what I did is I'm going to pull up my other form here real quick. And now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to share it up on our screen again here. And now that I shared it on my screen here, I'm actually going to go and make it much bigger if I can here. Here, let's just increase the view size of it. Zoom in there. Let's zoom in there about 200%. How about that? All right. And this is where I made my own change of it. And this is what I use for my Aries Races group because we wanted to come up with a standardized set of channels to know, hey, what is this? What is this? What are all these frequencies? How do you have it laid out and stuff? More so because of this factor. You might have a Yaesu. They might have an ICOM. I might have a Kenwood. Someone may have an Alinco. Someone may have an Anytone. The point is that we're all different radios. Some may be amateur. Some may be business. Who knows? But if you can use that radio to communicate, we have to come up with a standard set or layout of frequencies, and we have to come up with a standard channel layout, and then more so the name. The nomenclature is a big one for me. And I know for you, especially when you're doing the Berkey, that became quite an issue on it.
Yeah.
But as you see, what I did here is, and I'll actually back it down just a little bit there so it doesn't so crowded there. But what I did is I said, I want to lay mine out on an Excel spreadsheet. I want to make slight little changes for a purpose. And what that purpose is first of all, I'll go kind of to this generalized one here, and I got to blow it back up now that I just did all that. And what I did is first of all, I wanted to include the title in there. So the title would be sort of, what is this ICS-205 form doing? And granted, it's not the official ICS-205 form, but what this form allows me to do is a couple things. One, it allows me to kind of do what I call a TIC-P. And a TIC-P, if you know for there, is Tactical Interoperability Communications Plan. It's basically saying, hey, you have a reserve of all the frequencies that your radio may have or that you may need to use or could be at your disposal. So that's where I came up with this. And I made, once again, I'm going to go through little changes here. So title is what it would be. So if it's like the VHF amateur block, primary, whatever you want to call it, you can call it. The date that this was actually used or formed, and then the zone name. So if it has a zone name, so this might be, once again, VHF amateur local. But going along the top here, so we have the standard zone and channel number for your layout, like we did on the ICS-205. We have the channel name on there also. But what you notice we don't have, because this is more so of a, like I said, a TIC-P instead of a 205, is you don't have any sort of assignment or discipline. That you can put in over on this side over here, which is underneath notes. Yep. But what I did is, now you have a receive frequency spot. Now you have a receive PL or DPL or CTCSS tone. Then you also have a receive NAC code, or you can use it as a color code, or you can use it as a DGID code. So you basically can have any sort of NAC code or something that you want in there. So color code, NAC code, whatever you want in there. Transmit frequency, transmit tone again, transmit NAC if it's digital. And now notice over here, now we've added talk groups. Because DMR has talk groups, P25 has talk groups, as well as NextEn has talk groups on there. So when I'm doing this form here now, if I want to, okay, so we're going to do zone 1, channel 1, and let's say channel name is going to be VHF FM, for argument's sake, and we're going to go 147.000.0, and then let's say it's 100 hertz for receive. Nothing in the NAC, so I usually put a negative sign there so I know that the field wasn't overlooked. And we're going to go 147.600 or 6,000. Doesn't matter. I'm a 4-digit kind of frequency guy. But then the talk group NAC, once again, is negative, and then there is no talk group for it on there. So I'm going to put negative for the talk group, negative for that on there. But now let's go ahead and fill out a DMR repeater. So we're going to go DMR UHF, let's say. And now let's say that frequency is going to be 443.225 on there. Now what's going to happen is, this is a DMR frequency, I'm not going to have any receive tone on there. So I'm going to put an X there. But now let's say the color code is 1. So I'd put CC1 in this form. Now we're going to go to the transmit frequency. The transmit frequency is going to be 5 up for where we're at in the Midwest. So it's 448.225. And we're going to put, once again, color code 1. No transmit NAC on there. Or excuse me, I actually did it wrong. You're not catching me on this one here. See? I did that. Sorry. There's no transmit tone there. Now we're going to go ahead and do CC1 because that's color code 1. But now this is where the talk group's going to come into it. And let's say it's going to be the Wisconsin Link talk group. So it's 31551 for talk group in decimal. So remember, talk groups can be decimal and hexadecimal. So some radios program differently. You can usually select it on there. I don't know the hexadecimal, so I'd have to look it up. So let's even make it easier. Decimal is 1, hexadecimal is 1. So there you go. So that's how you would do a DMR channel. Now let us go ahead and do a P25, and let's make it a VHF repeater. And let's say that's going to go ahead and be 146.610. And then let's really kind of throw a wrench into work. So let's say it's a mixed mode repeater. So it's mixed mode. So we're going to first program up. Let's program it up for the analog side. And let's do a receive NAC of F7E. That's kind of like carrier squelch in NAC terms. And now the transmit frequency is going to be 146.0100. And then now we have to decide. This is the big side. Are we going to program this for digital transmit or analog transmit? So now in this case, what I have to do is I have to determine, I said, let's program it up for FM first. So we're going to do 110.9. And because it's FM, we're not going to be doing any sort of hex code on there. And let's say they run a talk group of 4 on there for argument's sake. Now, this is a good place in the notes, and I didn't do it on the DMR, but this would be a good place where you could put in the DMR only. And then maybe this one here, because it's mixed mode, we're doing mixed mode FM transmit. Now, we're going to go do the same thing, but now we're going to program the digital side. And so now we're going to go 1, we're going to go 4, and we're going to do P25 VH. Well, actually, let's do it this way. Make it easier name. VHF P25 TX. So we're going to do the same frequency once again. But this time, remember, we're doing mixed mode, so you could put in the receive frequency. You could put in the receive NAC code. You can put in the transmit frequency as normal. But now, it's not going to be a PL or DPL. Now we have to enter the NAC code. Let's say, argument's sake, it's 100. And then in this case, we know it's the NAC code. So if you want to, you can put NAC on there. NAC. And then let's say they're going to be used talk, once again, talk group 4. And now we could put here, in this here, mixed mode P25 TX. There, that simple, that easy. Just to kind of start entering your frequency information in there. Now we're going to go back over to mine here. This is what we do in our local Aries Races group to have it on there. We have it channels on there, and we have it kind of standardized too. So we break it down into 16 groups, just largely based on the fact of saying, hey, if you have different radios, because I know you, for example, you have public safety grade radios or LMR type radios, right? And LMR, they go by 16 channels for some reason. Don't know why, that's what they did. But on an amateur, right, we just spin the dial on some radios and just spin on there. But what we did is we grouped it on there. So now everybody knows if I say go to the VHF Baldwin area zone or AMV Bald, so amateur VHF Baldwin, go to AMV Bald channel 3, we know that's the WEC BAL repeater, and then there's your frequency on there. Once again, you'll notice there's the receive frequencies, there is the receive tones. This is all analog, so there's going to be no receive NAC. There's not going to be any TX NAC. There's not going to be any talk groups. There's just going to be FM frequencies on there. Now, when people ask me, they say, hey, John, do you have a listing of your frequencies or this or this or this? Now I could just simply and easily take this form and then go and just hand it to them, hand it off real quick and easy. So that's kind of an ICS-205. It is a great tool on many different levels on there. Yeah, I like them. I don't know. I just like them.
Yeah, very good. It at least this way you hand that out to every person partaking in your communication system so that they know, like I said, what frequency to use, what not to use maybe, how to communicate with the other people in your group.
And I like our 205 because this is the time of year in the winter, the springtime when I'm doing my public safety stuff, working with the ambulance service, doing those things. This is usually the slower times of the year, so that's when we like to do a lot of programming, updating, and everything. Yep. But here's what it is I could literally just fling a form at the person. So if I'm sitting down with the chief and saying, okay, what do we want to do? How do we want to change frequencies? We don't have authorization to use this one anymore, or now, hey, they want us to start using this one instead and stuff. I can write this down, and then I prevent the fat finger screw up, and then I can prevent the fat head screw up. So the fat finger screw up is like when you're going, it's like 154, 235, or 325, and I enter 235. I could check that on the list, but then also too is I can actually validate my frequencies that I'm entering. And for all you scanner listener out there, you can even ask some reputable sources. This is how anal retentive I am. I actually build a 205 for my scanner frequencies.
Yeah.
So yes. So that's, and I'm sure people are going to chime in on that one there. So but yeah, so that's the 205. I hope people I hope someone's going to get usage out of it. I guess I don't really know what to say there.
I think so.
Alrighty. So hey, first of all, thanks very much, Dad. So Wally N9VAO, he was my special guest. I think he's still on this side, right there.
Yeah, I'm over
That guy
here.
right there. And for people that were joining late, the orange is not because you get lost in the house. Okay, the orange is not because he gets lost in the house. It is deer hunting season.
There is
So
one thing I would like to add, John, and I
yeah,
think you said you had one person come in and ask about the Berkey thing. Anybody watching us wants more information on the American Berkey ski race, or if they'd like to come up here and help with it, the race is always the third weekend in February. I haven't got a calendar in front of me to tell you the exact dates, but it's always the third weekend. If you want more information on it, want to talk to me about it, here is my email address, N9VAO. That's my call, November 9, Victor Alpha Oscar, at yahoo.com. And I'll be glad to get back to you.
all right. I'm gonna put that in there. N9VAO at yahoo.com.
Mm-hmm.
And then I will pin it on there. So if you reach out to Wally and IVAO for helping with Berkey comms, go ahead and reach in
Or
there.
if they
That is
just
the
have any
address.
questions about how we do it or what's the ski race all about, I'll be glad to answer.
Yep. And it is actually a good event. And I'll be honest with you, I recommend, even if you're not a ham, some events, unfortunately, they do not want amateur radio operators out there. They just want people to help with the communications. If you belong
Mm-hmm.
to a communications club or something like that, like GMRS, FRS, Aries,
Yep.
Races, anything like that whatsoever, do not be afraid or do not hesitate to reach out and do this.
Yep.
And practice the 205, get involved, everything like that on there. So thank you very much for joining me
Glad to.
as there. Couple interesting things coming up next week. Got some more special guests coming up here. We're going to have a pretty good in-depth discussion. If you know my friends of Ham Radio, some of them from Coffee and Ham Radios are going to be on
Yep.
there, is what we got planned up here for there. So we're going to be having a good in-depth discussion. So definitely stop on in and tune in next week. Once again, 8 p.m. Central Time on our channel here, Communications and Cigars. Oh, you know what? We forgot to do it. I'm in Studio B, of course, the basement. Any good cigars you've enjoyed recently?
Yes, the last time I was on with you, I had that Quorum cigar, and I
Mhm.
got a hold of some more of them, and that I had another one just yesterday, and I really like them. They're not that expensive, but they are a good mild cigar, especially if you want something to just relax with and have maybe your favorite sippy with it. Let me put it that way.
And I'll tell you, I recently have indulged in the Deadwood Cigar Company, and there is Fat Bottom. I think it's Fat Bottom Betty, and I forgot what the other one is on there. But they make three of them, and oh, they're so delicious.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's about it there. So happy Thanksgiving to all. Once again, tune in next week.
Yes.
We got some more. Like I said, we got some guests which will be appearing here live in December. I am going to have a few shows that are going to be coming up, which are going to be recorded, but not to worry. There's a lot of good information on there. Once again, if you do have an idea for a show, comment, questions, suggestions, anything, I'm open to it. Believe it or not, communications-cigars at jjkcom.com. So
One
thanks.
thing
Oh, go ahead.
I want to bring up one thing.
Mhm.
Is Santa Claus going to be on the air this year?
I'm sure he's on the air somewhere. I'm sure he's on
Okay.
the air somewhere. I mean, that man's busy. That
Yeah.
man's I mean, with all the ships out, right, in
Oh,
L.A. Harbor there.
yeah.
Right.
He's got to make a lot of toys that
Yeah.
didn't come from China this year.
Exactly. All righty. Well, thank you, everyone. Remember, 73. Stay safe. Have a happy Thanksgiving. It's my favorite holiday because all you have to do is
Yeah.
eat and do nothing
Yeah.
else. And I will catch you back here next week.